Close your eyes and imagine standing in Rome. You hear the low hum of traffic rolling over cobblestones. Scooters weave between cars, their engines buzzing sharply through the warm air. Now imagine it is the year 1000. The air smells of smoke from wood fires. Goats wander between broken marble columns. Ancient walls loom overhead, cracked, half-collapsed, but still impossibly massive. If you stood on the Capitoline Hill around the year 1000, the first thing you would notice is how empty the city feels. Because Rome is no longer the capital of an empire. It is something very different. By the year 1000, Rome had been living in the shadow of its former self for nearly 5 centuries. The Western Roman Empire formally collapsed in 476. That date is symbolic, but the decline had been gradual. Over the 5th and 6th centuries, Rome endured repeated sieges during the Gothic Wars. Aqueducts were damaged. Trade networks shrank. The imperial administration vanished. In the 2nd century AD, Rome may have held over 1 million inhabitants. By the year 1000, historians estimate its population somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000. If you walked through Rome in the year 1000, you would still see the Colosseum towering over the landscape. The Pantheon still standing, now a Christian church. Massive imperial forums partly buried in soil, the Aurelian walls encircling the city. But these monuments were no longer what they once were. The Colosseum was not hosting gladiatorial games. Portions of it were used for housing and storage. The Roman Forum was not the political heart of the world. It was a grazing field. Medieval Romans called it the Campo Vaccino, the cow pasture. Ancient marble was no longer sacred, it was a quarry. Columns were dismantled. Bronze was melted and reused. The city was mining its own past to survive. This reuse of ancient material, what historians call spolia, was not vandalism in the modern sense. It was practical necessity. If you look carefully in Rome today, you can still see Roman columns embedded in medieval churches. In the year 1000, Rome was not ruled by an emperor residing in a marble palace. Political authority was fragmented. The most powerful figure in the city was the Pope. By this time, the Bishop of Rome had become not only a spiritual authority, but also a territorial ruler. The Pope did not govern uncontested. Local noble families such as the Crescenti and the Tusculani dominated large sections of the city. They fortified ancient structures and used them as private strongholds. Political violence was common. Rival factions fought for influence over the papacy itself. Popes were deposed, exiled, even imprisoned. Rome in 1000 was not a unified civic entity. It was a patchwork of fortified zones controlled by powerful clans. If you compare that to modern Rome, a centralized capital city, it is almost unrecognizable. Most of Rome's ancient urban area was no longer densely inhabited. Instead of filling the entire enclosed space of the Aurelian walls, the population clustered in specific districts, particularly near the Tiber River and around major churches. The bend of the Tiber was crucial. River access meant trade, water, and transport. Although Rome was no longer the center of a Mediterranean empire, goods still arrived by river and sea. Housing was modest. Forget the towering Roman insulae of the imperial period. By the year 1000, most homes were small, often 2 stories at most, built from reused stone, brick, and timber. Streets were narrow and irregular, especially compared to the straight Roman grid that had once defined the city. Sanitation was basic. The ancient sewer system still existed in parts, but without large-scale maintenance, it no longer functioned as it once had. Waste disposal was inconsistent, yet this was not a city in total collapse. It was adapted to its scale. Daily life revolved around survival and routine. Most residents of Rome around the year 1000 were artisans, small-scale traders, clergy or laborers. Agriculture also took place within the city's abandoned spaces. Gardens filled former plazas. Fields appeared between ruins. The diet was simple. Bread made from wheat or other grains, beans and lentils, cabbage, onions and herbs, olive oil. Occasionally fish from the Tiber meet, but rarely for ordinary people wine remained common, often diluted with water. Unlike Imperial Rome, with its grain fleets from North Africa, food supply in 1000 depended more heavily on local production and regional trade within central Italy. The scale had shrunk, but life continued. If you were in Rome in the year 1000, one thing would be unmistakable. This was a Christian city. Ancient temples were long closed or converted. Pagan statuary stood broken or reinterpreted. Churches dominated the skyline more than civic buildings did. Pilgrimage was a major force in the city's survival. Rome remained one of the most important pilgrimage destinations in Western Europe. Devotees traveled to visit the tombs of Saints Peter and Paul. This steady flow of visitors brought economic life. The old Basilica of St. Peter, long before the Renaissance structure we know today, stood in the Vatican area, outside the ancient city centre. Around it, markets, hostels, and small businesses catered to pilgrims. It was no longer the capital of an empire, but it was the centre of Latin Christianity. The Rome of 1000 was not static. Over the next centuries, gradual population growth, increased pilgrimage, and stronger papal authority would slowly reshape the city. By the 12th century, communal movements began to emerge. By the late Middle Ages, construction projects increased. The Renaissance would eventually transform Rome again, architecturally, politically, culturally. But that later brilliance was built on survival. The Rome of the year 1000 was a city that had endured catastrophic population collapse, economic contraction, warfare, and political instability. And it did not disappear. It contracted, it adapted, it repurposed its ruins. Civilizations do not always vanish in dramatic flames. Sometimes they shrink, fragment, and quietly continue. If you walk through Rome today and see a medieval bell tower rising beside a Roman column, you are looking at that moment of survival. The year 1000 was not the end of Rome. It was one of its narrowest points, when the eternal city was no longer eternal in power, but still alive in memory and faith. And from that smaller, humbler city would eventually emerge the Rome we know now.